This week, Friday, February 6th through Thursday, February 12th, 2026, is an incredible time astrologically. We're in eclipse season officially now. We're building up to a solar eclipse in Aquarius on February 17th. And Neptune is newly in Aries with Saturn preparing to join next weekend. So it's an incredible moment in time astrologically, and we'll talk about all of that today. But the main focus of this report actually isn't about any of that directly. That's how amazing this month is. In this report, I want to talk about Uranus, newly direct for the final couple of months in Taurus this week, coming into a square with these personal planets here in late Aquarius. It's sort of a parade of excitement as we build towards that eclipse coming up on the 17th, when the moon and the sun just so happen to come into that square at the same time as the eclipse, of course. And we also need to talk about Mercury in Pisces in today's report, because this is an energy that we'll be working with for a while. Mercury usually spends a few weeks moving through a sign, but Mercury will be in Pisces from February 6th until April 14th, thanks to a Mercury retrograde entirely in the sign of Pisces. So this is also interesting. Let's go ahead and get into it. I am so happy to have you all here. Feel free to leave any questions or comments in the chat, and I will check that at the end of presenting about the astrology. We'll do a little Q&A. And let's go ahead and put this on the chart. My hope is always that if you if you're learning astrology, that that if you enjoy learning astrology, this is helpful to you. And if you just want to follow along and listen to the astrology aspect of it and not worry about the chart, my hope is that this works for you too. My hope is just to sort of meet everyone wherever you are, and I think following along with the chart sometimes can be quite helpful. Okay, so we have Uranus here. Newly direct in Taurus. Uranus just turned direct on the 3rd, February 3rd. And now Uranus is forming these squares with the personal planets as they move through these late degrees of Aquarius. So Mercury went through it before moving into Pisces, which is something else we're going to talk about as a part of this report. And at the moment, Venus, at the moment of this chart, Venus is preparing for that. So Mercury's square is exact on the 5th, but still active on the morning and most of the day on the 6th until Mercury moves into Pisces. Then Venus comes into this square and perfects. And then when the sun and the moon too catch up to this point, it just so happens to be the moment of the eclipse. But let's sort of focus in specifically on Uranus here. It's a really interesting moment because this is Uranus's final months here in Taurus. And so Uranus turning direct for the final time on February 3rd, it's kind of a big deal. Where now this planet is moving direct and out of the sign. I think Uranus and Taurus has been tricky, but it's been helpful. Uranus can signify change, and it can often be surprising change that we wouldn't have expected. And Taurus, as a general rule, is not a fan of that kind of thing. Exact opposite. And And so I think that wherever we have Taurus in the chart, sometimes it can be hard to change in that part of our life, even if the change is an improvement. Even if the change is good and positive, we still kind of think, oh, it just feels uncomfortable. I don't really know. We really, really like to in the Taurus part of the chart, if we're not careful, to a fault. And so Uranus working through here since 2018 has been shaking up a part of life that we really don't like to have shaken up. So there's a couple different see that, right? And we can probably begin to look back on this Uranus transit and how it's affected us and see both sides. In some ways, of course, that's very difficult to have change come in an area of life where we don't enjoy change. That's such a difficult thing. But at the same time, it's also such a gift because this may be a part of our life, a part of the chart where we were really stuck, where we wouldn't grow and evolve, even if it was for the good, even if it was positive change. So something coming along and kind of pushing us a little bit in that way. Um, and I shouldn't put it that way because that makes it sound as though Uranus is causing these things, and that's not my belief about astrology at all, or most astrologers. It signifies that that's what's happening within us. You know, this astrology, in my opinion, isn't the cause of these things. What's going on within us is also expressing itself in the astrology. I'll link at the end of this video to a video where I explain my opinion about all of that, in case you're interested. But we're now wrapping up that transit of Uranus through Taurus. We have a couple months left until April. And then when Uranus enters Gemini in April, things are going to be so fast because Gemini isn't that way at all. Gemini doesn't hate change at all. Gemini loves change. Gemini, the way that Taurus sort of doesn't like to change in, whatever the Taurus part of our chart is, we can tend to get a little bit stuck and not want to grow, even if it's positive, because we value stability so much. Gemini almost has the opposite problem with change. Gemini can value change so much that it's like change for change's sake. And sometimes that's not really the wisest or best move even. But it can be very helpful. And it's a very dynamic and exciting sign that likes to learn new things, very curious, getting into stuff. Really enjoys change. So Uranus moving into Gemini for a few years, we'll be working with this energy for a while. It is going to help to speed up the pace of all the change that is happening in the world around us, in our own lives, mostly in the world around us. When we're talking about the outer planets, we're talking a lot about the collective, as they say, about things that are happening in the world, things that are happening for all of us. So I think this is a really interesting week to think about the Taurus part of your chart. If you know your rising sign, you can look at astrology reports on my channel, and that will show you the part of your chart that is Taurus ruled. You probably know that anyway. Think about where Uranus has been traveling through your chart. I know many of you know so much about astrology. I love hearing your feedback and your thoughts about astrology. We're all sort of in this together, studying this stuff, and learning this stuff and enjoying it. So yeah, it's a great time to sort of think about that Taurus sector of your chart, or just think back on your life a little since 2018 and all that you've worked with and learned, things that have moved and changed, that there was a time when you didn't know how you were going to move and change them. And probably maybe it sort of felt like things happened here that maybe at first felt difficult, But then now later you see that other side of the Uranus working in Taurus energy where, yeah, it is hard to move in a place where we like to be stable, but we appreciate that help. We appreciate the opportunity of that. So just sort of thinking back on everything that you've learned. And we could have some final sort of uh, Uranus excitement as Uranus finishes up these final months in Taurus, some more change, some final realizations or sort of wake up calls or just tensions that can't quite hold anymore. We're wrapping up the work here, and uh, sometimes that can sort of continue the work of Uranus forward. But I think for the most part, it's not going to be anything new. It's more like progress that you have already worked towards, and it's now kind of showing up. And sometimes we have that with a direct motion. I think it can be a little subtle with the outer planets, but sometimes it's like um, you feel like you're going back and forth, or you can't really make any progress, or you take one step forward and then two steps back, and there can be that feeling sometimes during a retrograde. And then when we have the direct motion, it's like, okay, here we go again. We're moving forward on this again in earnest. We're sort of building now. That sort of back and forth is over. And that feeling of like some sort of a delay is over. And sometimes even things can come together that you work towards during the retrograde, and the rewards or the benefits or the um, manifestations of that, the payback from that doesn't quite show up until the direct motion. So yeah, and then we are having these squares. So Mercury square to Uranus is on the 5th, and then on the 6th, on Friday, Mercury moves into Pisces, and we will talk about that in a minute with that Mercury retrograde. And then Venus is on the 8th, the Sun and the Moon as well are on the 16th and 17th, right with that eclipse. And then Mars won't come into this square until the 27th of February. So we're really working with these squares for a while. And it could be new mental information coming forward with the Mercury retrograde. This might be something that you sort of worked with towards the end of last week, but just to mention it anyway with this square, because I think it is feeding over into this weekend. There may have been some new information, some sort of mental, intellectual experience or work or progress or information, message, that truth, plan that sort of came together with that Mercury square. And it can be sort of sudden. Like I said, like you worked on it for a while and then all of a sudden it all comes together at once. And this can even be an internal process rather than an external one. So it could be that it's not that you get a message or some sort of from the outside, but more that you sort of have a sudden moment of clarity or understanding about something. A realization is a good way to put it. It can also show up, I should mention, just sort of like nervous mental energy. This can be, it's a square we're talking about here. So it can just be sort of overthinking or uh, disruptions with communication, disruptions with technology, maybe in some kind of way. Okay, and then the Venus square that we're working with more this weekend is interesting to pay attention to too. It could be sort of signifying some shifting relationship dynamics. Uranus we have been working with a part of our lives. We've been changing so much in recent years. We always are. And as we do, our relationships need to shift and adjust as well. But that can be very difficult, right? It can be challenging to allow people who you know to grow. It can be challenging to be patient with people who know you well as they catch up with your growth. But I think there could be something about this Venus-Uranus square, this final one. There have been many squares from Venus in Aquarius over to Uranus in Taurus, but this is the last one. There could be something here where those relationships kind of update, you know, where the relationship dynamic shifts to accommodate for what is now. I also think that Venus relates quite a lot to what we want, to what we desire, and I think that there's this story. It feels like a story. February feels, it doesn't even just feel like one story, it maybe feels like multiple stories. It's so busy astrologically. And it could be that part of that is adjusting what we want, desire, are going after, are drawn to, are attracted to right now. And this is part of why I'm talking about staying flexible in this report. There are other reasons too, but I think it's a great week to stay flexible because new, surprising information could be coming in, even about what you want, you know, even about where you're trying to go. So it's a great time, especially as Mercury moves into Pisces, which we'll get into in just a minute. It's a great time to be sort of a little open and loose about what you're thinking and what you're feeling. You know, do some things where you really kind of let your mind go and then see what pops up. See what messages come to the surface. You know, this can happen when you go for a walk and you're just walking in nature, and you can kind of get into a little bit of a mental flow state, you know, doing that. And then it's interesting sometimes the ideas that come to you or in the shower, right? People sometimes have ideas in the shower. Same thing. Meditation for sure. Even sleep, dreams, even just relaxing, and then sort of noticing what pops up. Yeah, I think that's about it for those squares. I guess the only other thing I want to say about it is related to these planets, this sort of procession of planets here. Let's give it a little bit of a better mark. We've been working with this really interesting stellium of planets. They've been traveling together, and that is going to continue to be the case. Mercury, Venus, the Sun, and Mars have really been moving together for a while. They were together in Capricorn. They came into an opposition with Jupiter. They moved into Aquarius and were conjunct Pisces. You know, we have so much going on right now with the outer planets. And the fact that all these personal planets just were conjunct Pluto and then now are squaring Uranus feels significant. There's just so much going on with the outer planets right now. You know, Neptune newly has moved into Aries. And we are sort of readying for this eclipse in Aquarius as these planets move through. The Sun and the Moon, as soon as the Moon catches up here, we're going to have that eclipse, even though the nodes haven't shifted yet. Yeah, there's just so much outer planet, sort of big picture stuff going on right now, which just feels like it's such a, especially with the fact that, let's put this up too. We have Neptune, let's do blue. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we have Neptune on January 26th. I'd like that to be a little bit lighter. Oh, that doesn't work. not quite that light. So we have Neptune moved into Aries on, sorry. There we go. Neptune moved into Aries on January 26th, and Saturn is still here in Pisces. Saturn will not move into Aries until February 13th. And when it does, it basically comes into this immediate conjunction with Neptune, although that doesn't perfect until the 20th. But right now, this week, we have Neptune in Aries and we have Saturn finishing up the work in Pisces. So this does feel like sort of a liminal space, a transition time, a time that is really, really ripe for planting seeds, for getting things off the ground, you know? And Mercury moving into Pisces right here. Oh my gosh, am I driving you all crazy putting too many marks on here? I know it's helpful, but I feel like I have to kind of get to it, you know? It could get to be too much. All right, let's go with orange. So here we have Mercury in Pisces. That's what we're going to focus on right now. Yeah, this really works with the sort of liminal space, transitioning period, watery, open, staying flexible vibe that we've been talking about here. So Mercury is moving into Pisces now, today, as I'm recording this on Friday, February 6th. And it will go retrograde later in the month. And yeah, I just think that works so nicely with everything that we're talking about. Usually Mercury spends 3 weeks in a sign. And because of this retrograde, Mercury is here now. Mercury is going to move all the way through Pisces, turn retrograde, go back, then turn direct and go forward. I'm going to drive everyone crazy, and I'm putting one more note on the board, on the board. It is kind of like a board though, on the screen here, because I think it really shows why Mercury is spending so long in a sign. Okay, so normally Mercury just like moves through a sign and it takes about 3 weeks. But when we have a retrograde, so 3 weeks in Capricorn, 3 weeks in Aquarius, about now we have this retrograde. So Mercury is entering now on February 6th, then going to go retrograde on February 26th, then direct on March 20th, and then finally exiting and moving on to Aries on April 14th. So see, you kind of get this motion where Mercury's covering the same ground multiple times. And this is why we often have to do things more than once when we're working with a Mercury retrograde. We have to have the same conversation more than once. We have to clear something up because Mercury's just kind of digging down in Pisces. It's very interesting. And I think that it's amazing that this is happening as Saturn and Neptune are leaving Pisces and moving into Aries. That just as that's happening, all of these personal planets are moving in, sort of like they're helping us. It's signifying that we're processing it all, that we're emotionally processing it all, feeling about it all as much as is appropriate. Yeah, I just think it's so interesting how they're coming in to fill that space just as Saturn and Neptune move out. You know what I mean? So yeah, Mercury and Pisces, it's not Mercury's favorite place to be. Mercury would much rather be across the way in Virgo, which is very precise and clear. That's not the case in Pisces, right? Mercury gets a little watered down. It's a little hard to express in a clear way. Pisces is more into symbols. Pisces is more into intuition and taking time to process and dreaming and spirituality, and sometimes Mercury can feel a little underwater here. It can be difficult. I don't think it's bad at all. It's not about things being good or bad. It is about some signatures signifying that certain things are easier than others. So I think that this Mercury retrograde is an amazing time to stay flexible, to allow whole new time to come in, right? Between Uranus, Pluto, Neptune, and Saturn. We're in this really big time astrologically. And Mercury working through Pisces is giving us an opportunity to slow down and to make meaning of all of that, to sort of tap in on a different level, symbolically, emotionally, taking the time to process, not thinking in linear black and white ways, being more open sort of than that, having different ways of understanding. There is some letting go to this too. Potentially some closure, some final pieces of that perhaps as Saturn and Neptune move in. And that can be through beautiful Pisces themes like understanding and forgiveness, that things are let go, and processed. Venus is going to be catching up with Mercury, and they're going to be together a bit during this time. And I think that that's helpful too, because Venus is exalted in Pisces. So I'm not worried about this Mercury retrograde at all. But I do think that it's a little difficult for things that are super, super precise. We might find that communication feels a little unclear, or like we're getting mixed signals in some kind of a way. We have these Mercury retrogrades in water signs in 2026. They were in fire signs in 2025, and that feels really different. This is more of a mixed signal type misunderstanding, where with the fire signs, we were getting into more like oversharing, over talking, over explaining, over scheduling ourselves. And the water sign Mercury retrogrades are a little bit different. They're a little bit more just sort of confusing, I would say. Oh, excuse my calendar reminder that I need to film this podcast today. It's a good thing we're here. So I think that's about it for today. Let me make sure. Let me double check my notes here. Well, just to say, it's a great time to stay flexible and open. With Uranus, with the eclipses coming in, with the Aries point so activated and everything going on there. It's just a very busy time. But I do want to say no astrology anxiety. I'm feeling like astrology anxiety out there is at a peak. And it's just because there's so much happening that it's sort of people are excited, and that take a break. Take a little bit of a break from astrology if you're feeling that way. Know that it's all good. It's exciting. Astrology is not meant to feel like it's explaining what's going to happen to us. We are empowered in this world. What we do is what matters most. So always stay positive and stay hopeful. And just keep going and doing the best you can with everything every day to move closer to your goals and help others and take good care of yourself and others. We're transitioning into a very busy time astrologically, and I know that can cause a lot of excitement. I am working on a video right now about the eclipses with my friend Corinne. We did a Saturn Neptune video. I'll link that here at the end as well. And also, what was the other video that we talked about that I said I would link at the end? I'll remember, and I'll link to that too. It was an explanation about Oh, about my beliefs about astrology and why it works. Yeah. So I'll link to that and the Saturn Neptune conjunction. And I will be back next week. And I hope you have an amazing week. And I'm going to go ahead and look at the chat. I hope you're all doing really well. So nice to see everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Purple Penny. Good morning, Bebo. So nice to see you both. Channeled Wellness. Yes, someone saying the 17th is also Mardi Gras. It is. The 17th is also Lunar New Year. So we're moving from that wood snake to fire horse energy, which I think works so well. I'm loving the way that resonates astrologically with moving from uh, earth and water to fire and air. That works really nicely. So yeah, the 17th, we're in it now. We're in it now. There's a lot of excitement in February, and I guess the second half of the month even more so. I mean, definitely the second half of the month even more so, but I think when we're in such an exciting time astrologically too, it's good to sort of step back and think big picture. It might not all be on these exact dates, uh, but it's certainly signifying that this is an important, an exciting moment in time. Good morning, Miss Tell. So nice to see you. Oh, John, I hope that I told you more about the Pisces. You're asking for more about the Pisces. I hope I did that. Yes, if you're interested, please check your astrology reports for February on my channel, Best Viewed by Rising Sign, for more information. I cover a lot of this there. The February reports are so detailed, and thank you so much to Aquarius and Pisces for being so patient. I probably included too many details, and it all took me too long. And so Pisces and Aquarius were released pretty late, but that's okay. I am enjoying reading your notes. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with each other. Yes, it does look complicated. I hope it was helpful. Oh, I'm just sending so much love to everyone, and I know that there's I know that this is a busy time. I know a lot of us are going through times that feel a little bit unstable in some kind of way. And I do think that everything that you all share is so helpful with each other. Talking about it helps. Remembering that thoughts are just thoughts helps. Remembering that one moment always does move into the next helps. So thank you for sharing with each other, taking good care of yourself, and enjoy this week. Stay flexible, stay open, because things are sort of moving and changing. Keep shining for sure, Lisa. And thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you so much.